Hello and welcome to another ship review. Today we will talk about Kestrel. Kestrel would be my recommendation if your character is skilled in the Caldari frigates, because this ship is pretty straightforward to fly and it gives a very clear pathway in terms of fighting style and in terms of skill points into Hookbill. And Hookbill is one of the most popular ships in faction warfare. As you can see, in terms of statistics, Kestrel is somewhere in the middle in terms of popularity, and it has pretty decent win rate for a Tech 1 frigate. As usual, don't really look at the win rate for Tech 1 stuff, because win rates really depend on what you decide to engage. If you will just fight against Tech 1 frigates, it will be much higher, and faction warfare gives you an opportunity to not engage against ships you don't want to engage. Okay, let's talk about the archetypes first. So this is a missile ship. Unlike Condor, you practically never see light missile kiting Kestrels for two reasons. Firstly, the range bonus on light missiles is useless for solo PvP because you already have sufficient range to cover Warp Disruptor range. And second, Kestrel is very slow. So if you want to kite with light missiles, you just use Condor. So practically every Kestrel in faction warfare will use rockets and try to scram kite. Next is, do you go shield or do you go armor tank? Naturally, Kestrel is a Caldari frigate. You would think that it's supposed to be a shield frigate, and 4-4-2 slot layout also kind of points towards shield tank, but the meta choice is actually to fit armor tank, because you need double webs. And if you want to have double webs, then it means you have Afterburner Scram, double webs, and you run out of mid slots. So you have to go armor plus a whole tank. And now, why do you need double webs? Well, firstly, you need double webs to apply full damage with rage missiles against afterburning frigates, and a good portion of your engagement range will be afterburning frigates, Tech 1 frigates in particular. And rage missiles just give you a massive boost to DPS, and generally it's worth dropping some tank to apply with rage. The second reason is that you need control. Because Kestrel is so slow, you can't really effectively scram kite with just a single web, because your control will not be sufficient to hold the range against the majority of your engagement profile. So this is why you need two webs. I will show you feats a bit later, but basically the vast majority of Kestrels in faction warfare are scram kiters with rockets, double webs, and armor tank. Now, what are the advantages and disadvantages of Kestrel? The main advantage is, as I said, it gives very clear pathway towards Hookbill, and you also can use some tricks to get a pretty decent win rates. Firstly, Kestrel has bonus to range, and with rocket it's actually a very useful bonus, because you can web kite for a while until you commit to scram kiting, and you will still apply with rockets. And secondly, since you have two webs and you generally fight in position, quite often, especially against Tech 1 frigates, you can just leave, because most Tech 1 frigates will have a single web. Now, what are the disadvantages? Well, the biggest disadvantage is that your engagement profile is quite narrow. You don't have a lot of tricks like Atron has, or Condor, or Breacher, or some other attack Tick 1 frigates. You are very straightforward Scrum kiter. So for example, against Navy frigates, you almost always face two webs as well. And when you face two webs against two webs, it just comes down to numbers essentially. And Tech 1 frigates are not gonna win numbers game against Navy frigates. So in many cases, you cannot fight Navy frigates with double webs at all. So your engagement profile against Navy frigates will be limited to something like comets, for example, which is not bad, but it's not the greatest either. And the same works for destroyers. Against destroyers, you generally want to mitigate full damage, and with Rocket Kestrel, you just can't. You can fit a tracking disruptor, but because Kestrel is so slow, you just can't really mitigate enough damage, at least, to beat a destroyer, a Navy destroyer in particular. So this is why your engagement profile isn't great. It essentially leaves something like Tech 1 frigates, some close range Navy frigates if you're in position, and some close range Tech 1 destroyers if you're in position, and that's it, which is not that many. The second problem is that you are very predictable. So unlike Atron, for example, everyone knows that a Kestrel will be Scram kite with rockets. And since you really want to be in position in Kestrel, it just means that everyone will bring something unpleasant for you. So you will either have to be in position and fight something unpleasant, or you have to be out of position. And both of this is not particular great outcomes. All right, now let's look at the most popular fits. Okay, so as I mentioned, you have essentially one main fit, Rocket Kestrel with double webs. High and medium slots are self-explanatory, and in low slots you fit your tank. You need damage control with bulkheads to get buffer on hit points, and Ancillary rep is a typical module for these kinds of frigate fits. Usually these Kestrels also fit DPS rig instead of full tank in rigs. So your control will be quite good. You have 2 Tech 2 webs, and usually you can escape fights against any frigate with 1 web and against many frigate with 2 webs as well if you're in position. And you can apply full damage with Rage Rockets even against Afterburner frigates. One trick that you need to know is that the DPS range is 13 kilometers, almost 13 kilometers with Rage Rockets, and it matches overheated web range. So you don't need to start the fight at Scram range. You usually can start a fight around 13 kilometers, apply some damage at the edge of web range, and only later move closer to secure a tackle. Because in the majority of cases, you will be in position in these situations, and people who warp into you will not really be looking at bailing out immediately. So you can use this to get a head start in the DPS race. As I said before, the alternative, and this is probably the fit that the Kestrel was initially designed for, is the shield tanking Rocket Kestrel. But as I said, your control is quite poor, so generally you lose the ability to leave a fight even when you started in position, which is quite huge because you can escape a lot of unfavorable fights with double web Kestrel. And secondly, if you fight against Tech 1 frigates, you will have to use Navy ammo, not Rage ammo, because your application with a single web will be poor. And it really drops your DPS. So overall, the hit points by DPS look a bit better when on double web Kestrel, but in practice this feat is a bit worse because you lose control, and control is more important usually in frigate fights. But if you wanna try it out, this is the basic feat for Kestrel, for Shield Kestrel. Okay, I think this is everything I wanted to say about this ship, so hope you found it useful, and I will see you in the next ship reviews.